Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. Yeah, it's about that time of year again, isn't it? I've told you for the longest time that the purpose of any media is to promote a particular value system. But I also told you that any media is defined by who owns it, who runs it, and whose interests they operate in. And when one looks at some of these old fossils, like the NAACP, who do you think pulls their strings? The NAACP is a relic, a pathetic dinosaur, but the thing is this dinosaur's been on life support because it's been getting the occasional infusion of no doubt virgin blood from the white media. They're basically nothing more than a pathetic social club. For all of these black baby boomer social climbers, I can't think of anybody relevant who's part of it. Practically all of their membership happens to be in the 65 to dead demo. But they understand exactly how they're going to get some of that white corporate donation money. They know exactly how to get it. You got to show you have contempt for the black community. You also got to show that you don't really stand for anything black. Black is kind of a brand name, more or less. It's basically what you do so you can build your foundation with some of those dumb Negroes who just don't know any better and who don't actually check anything out before they give their money to it. And that's how you have Awkwafina, the resident black scent imitator. And this piece of garbage, the NAACP thinks, let's go ahead and give her an award for her voiceover work. Gee, I wonder if she did it with a black scent or not. I haven't seen whatever little animation she was part of, but I'd like to see it just to figure out, does she do her black scent or not? Because that's been her ticket to ride. To nominate her for an NAACP Image Award because of her voice work. You don't even need me to come up with the insults. These insults write themselves. Because the NAACP is an insult. And by the way, Awkwafina is not the only example of non-traditional nominations from the NAACP. They're also giving nominations to other non-black people such as Maya Erskine. I'm not sure exactly who she is or what she does. Quinn Tran, I think she's a cinematographer. And here all this time, I thought the point of the NAACP Image Awards was to give black people in television and movies a platform so that they could be showcased for their effort. Because I'm willing to bet that if you were to check out the AAPI Film Awards or any of the awards for Asian American Pacific Islanders, whether it's in the US, Canada, or anywhere else, you're not going to be seeing any black people nominated for anything. And the reason that they'll give you is, well, black people already have the NAACP Image Awards. You got the Source Awards. Why, there are more black people who get nominated at the Oscars, blah, blah, blah. And here the NAACP is saying, we agree. Too many black people are getting nominations. Too many black people are getting recognized. We need to switch it up. So clearly the NAACP is screaming to whatever white corporation or rich non-black donors they can find that they want to go mainstream. They don't want people to think the NAACP has anything to do with black people. Why? NAACP is just a brand name. You know, the initials don't stand for anything. You know, kind of like AT&T and AOL, the letters don't actually stand for anything anymore. By the way, this is the same NAACP who will try to make you believe that they have any sort of camaraderie with Oscars So White. They'll be the main ones saying not enough black people represented at the Oscars, but here's what they're doing at their own award ceremony. This is the reason why black folks, particularly the under 40 crowd, they don't fool with the NAACP. Nobody does. We understand exactly what these guys are. They've been trying to represent the LGBT community, immigrants. They're trying to represent people who ridicule the black community, anyone except for black folks. That's who they're about. The NAACP doesn't even qualify for the insult of controlled opposition because these scumbags aren't opposing anything. They're for everything. Well, except for respect for the black community, that seems to be something the NAACP is not about. They call themselves the Image Awards, but mostly what they do is image assassination. And just to show you that this wasn't some one-off or some massive oversight, the NAACP also made sure that all the other bottom feeders they could find are represented. Billy Porter's got a nomination, Issa Rae's got a few, Lil Nas X has got a few, Doja Cat's got a few, Cynthia Erivo's got a few nominations, Tarana Burke, even she's got one, Jada Pinkett Smith, and even our resident MLK expert Rihanna has a nomination from the NAACP Awards this year. Perhaps nobody from the NAACP follows her on Twitter, but I would be more willing to bet that nobody from the NAACP cares. It's not that those morons don't know, it's that they don't care. They're clout chasing. Because that's what obsolete old fossils have to do. They got to clout chase. They got to figure out how do we find a way to hustle some money from as many people as possible. Sure, they've got some solid brothers and sisters in the lineup, but that's like sprinkling sugar on crap. Now, beyond the obvious insult of having trash like Rihanna and Lil Nas X and the rest of the garbage being offered award nominations, I think it needs to be reiterated what the point of an awards show is. What's the point of having awards, period? The point of having awards is to bestow instant legitimacy onto something. That's the reason why you do it. Is when a group of people get together and they decide that here is something that they want the society to see as having genuine value. This is something of true merit. This is something that deserves to be put on a pedestal. This is something that we all should salute to. And that's what awards are about. It's a way for a group to credentialize someone. It's a way to give this person some sort of credit and say everybody ought to be looking at this person as being the best. Why? Because we said so. Because an award itself is not the achievement. The award is allegedly supposed to be given to the person in recognition of their achievement. But of course, when you have the white media who's in control of things and too many people don't ask enough questions, what happens is the award and the alleged achievement basically become one and the same. You don't even know what the heck the person got the award for, which strips the achievement of all meaning. All that matters is they got the award. So that's how the dominant society uses these awards. They become an end unto themselves. But it's understood the NAACP is attempting to boost the profile and to lend black credibility. They're trying to be pretending as if they're going to be lending black credibility to certain select individuals. They're going to be giving these people the nod, and why? You got the black community who's giving them an award. Nah, you got this sequestered, old, obsolete group of septuagenarians who are desperately trying to make themselves relevant somehow. That's who it is. When you look at the overall field of nominees, what you find is a disproportionate number of people who are there for really no other reason other than what they do in the bedroom, whatever their orientation may be, or the people are there simply because perhaps they've espoused some viewpoint that the NAACP thinks is going to be most agreeable with the interests and aims of white supremacy. That's where Tyrannosaurus Burt comes in. Or you got somebody who mostly are there because they've disrespected black people somehow. You got Rihanna. She's disrespected MLK, Jada Pinkett Smith. There's another one. She basically castrates Will Smith every chance she gets, but basically they like her because they see her as castrating black manhood. And of course, Issa Rae, she's their perennial favorite because of that. Lil Nas X, who apparently his only achievement is running around in pink, surrounding himself with a bunch of dudes and trying to show that he's the horniest thing on 2 feet. I'm not sure how that's an accomplishment, but when the bar is low enough, and speaking of a low enough bar, Billy Porter. He's written a so-called autobiography. The title of it is Unprotected. I'm not sure if he's talking about himself or if he's saying what he hopes every man who reads the book will be. But you look at this gallery of rogues. I mean, these individuals, their main claim to fame is basically that they have, at some point or another, disrespected black folks, and the NAACP is attempting to get black people to respect them. You want to know where all this off-code garbage comes from, where you got black folks who make excuses for those who ridicule us and insult us? Dr. John Henrik Clarke talked about that a while back with the Million Man March. He had criticism for Minister Farrakhan, and I'm not trying to get into those murky waters, because I know there's some people get caught up in their feelings, but Dr. Clarke was simply saying a point. You got people who ridicule us due to our skin color or the texture of our hair, and then those same people turn around and say, you ought to respect me. Well, respect is a two-way street. Now, if you're going to sit here and you're going to be having individuals from outside the black community at these award shows, fine. But I expect reciprocity from those other award shows. If the NAACP is going to be giving a nomination and possibly an award to Awkwafina, then I'd like to know when are the Asian American Pacific Islander Film Awards or whatever organization there is going to start giving awards to Eddie Murphy. Because if there's no harm meant by Awkwafina doing her black scent, then there should be absolutely no harm meant by Eddie Murphy's numerous characterizations over the decades. But not just that, I'd like to also see black cinematographers and black costume designers being nominated for awards from these Asian American film organizations because they worked on a movie or a TV show that had a predominantly Asian American cast. If we're going to be broadening our horizons, then everybody needs to do it, not just us. Otherwise, it's not horizons being broadened, it's basically black people looking for approval. And that game doesn't work. And while we're on the subject of television, not to be messy, but we need to point out that without black people in the United States, none of these non-black people would be on a TV show or in movies. That includes black people in Britain, by the way. Britain's black population is only 3%. You heard me right. That's it, 3%. But you wouldn't know it by looking at British television or movies. 3%. What that means is they're a smaller percentage of the British population than Asian Americans are of the US population. And yet we see black Britons represented more than Asians on British television and movies. Now, why is that? It's because of the presence of US movies and TV shows around the world. American television has permeated the globe. The United States sets the standard for the world, and black people in the US, we made it a point to demand that we be on those screens. So when all of those American TV shows and movies got exported to the world, they saw a steady, regular representation of black people, and not just as porters and janitors, or not just in the background. We were fighting to make sure we were as prominent as possible. And to this day, none of the Afro-Britons that I've seen have said so much as thank you. They basically just go on as if somehow their position had just popped up out of the ground when it didn't. Apparently, some of them think that they did it all on their own, and yet the only black British actors that you can think of are the ones who came to the United States. David Oyelowo complains bitterly about the discrimination that black British actors face, and he's got a point, but he'd be even more upset if he didn't have us to help him have a career in the first place. I have yet to see him express his gratitude. John Boyega only became a thing because of us. You can't name a role that he's played as an Afro-Briton. Sure, he's done 1 or 2 flicks over there, a couple of TV appearances, but it's not anything you would have heard of. To say nothing of Idris Elba. I think the less said, the better. My point is that without black Americans fighting for our place in front of the camera, there would still be no black faces on British TV. It would be just like Canadian television. You'd see more polar bears on the BBC than black folks. Now again, I'm not trying to be messy, but I'm just trying to be factual here. If the British were to give acting roles based on their percentage of the population, then you'd see Asians, Pakistanis, and the like, but you wouldn't be seeing black faces much except 3% of the time. And yet, whenever you got some British TV show that's on, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 black people, and they're not going to be the ones sweeping floors either. They're going to have speaking roles in front of the camera. As an example, on BBC, they've got a show called Vigil. It's basically a submarine drama. I'm not sure what it's about exactly. I guess somebody's trying to start World War III. To me, the trailer looked like a poor man's Crimson Tide. But I couldn't help but notice they made sure that pretty much the only black person in the whole cast happens to be the captain of the submarine. And that's significant because, to the best of my knowledge, Britain doesn't have any black flag-level officers. To the best of my knowledge, right now, the Royal Army and Royal Marines don't have any black generals, that's for sure. And of course, the Royal Navy, they don't have any black captains or admirals. If somebody can name one for me that they have right now, I can't think of any they've had right now. I can't even think of any that they've had in the past. Outside of science fiction. It would be ridiculous to have a black person in Britain who's actually calling the shots in a military unit or any sort of armed forces. But what gives it credibility and makes it where, at the very least, it's something that you can put on television without people just rolling their eyes is because of the work that we put in. We made a space for all these other black people around the world because the US media sets the frame for everyone else, and we stepped up and put our bid in. Everyone has benefited from what we've done, but they've all made it a point to act as if they did it on their own and then doubled down on that by disrespecting us openly. It's bad enough that they don't give us any credit, but then they turn around and say, oh, by the way, while we're at it, let's go ahead and spit in your faces too. And as soon as white supremacy puts his foot up their behinds, then they want to wave the flag. Enough of that. And for the NAACP to be nominating an award to someone who does the very kind of things that they occasionally would call out as racist, that just shows how absurd these fossils from a bygone era are. If it ain't Negro Jim Clyburn with his fish fries, it's the doggone NAACP giving awards to people who ridicule us and mock us. And for the people who don't like the tone and tenor of what it is that I'm saying, get used to it. We're doing what every culture is supposed to do, ensuring its integrity. See, what's happened is black folks have allowed everybody else to be able to eat off of our effort for so long they feel entitled to. We have not demanded any sort of respect or imposed consequences for disrespect. It's been going on for so long. Everybody else is shocked when we start doing it. Oh, where did this come from? You guys are, when did this start? That's the reaction that they're having. It's not so much that they're offended by what we're doing. They're fine with it because everybody else does, and even these other immigrant groups, they do it. The part that offends them is that they see that we're the ones doing it, and then they become only too aware of just how big a role that we played in whatever it is that they were able to achieve. We were the ones who kicked open the door for them. And they also become excruciatingly aware of what would happen if we decided, hey, we're going to start projecting to the rest of the world that unless you can trace your lineage back to the slave fields of the American South, we really ain't trying to fly the flag like that. We're really not doing that. Because that 3% of black people in Britain, they wouldn't have any kind of voice at all if it wasn't for the fact that when they speak up, they have a force multiplier over here in the U.S. We tend to pick up their cause for them. We tend to do it in a place where actually the whole world's going to hear it, because when it's said over here in the United States, everybody hears about it. But again, you got to have enough people in order to be heard, even here. So get used to it. We're going to start checking people's paperwork. That's what this is. We're checking people's paperwork. We're looking at your resume. We're looking at your work history. Oh, you say you got yourself some commendations and awards? Who'd you get it from? NAACP. Ooh, you can just go ahead and leave now then. We don't need you. That's how you stop people from taking you for granted. When they understand that there's rules and regulations for this group, that means we prevent them from using us and we prevent them from being of use to white supremacy. And sure, there's going to be the predictable caterwauling and whining and wailing about it, but they'll get used to it. They're going to have to. As the NAACP continues its pathetic spiral into obsolescence and oblivion, we're going to continue to chronicle for you all this little dirty stuff that they've been doing. This is the garbage that they're doing on behalf of who they want their corporate sponsors to be. And they're trying to get us on board with it as well. They're going to try to get in front of the cameras, and the white media will pretend as if, oh, they speak for the black community, speak for the black community. The days of them being able to pull that little con and being able to do that little dirty maneuver, those days are also coming to an end. If we could break the back of Mike Bloomberg in a day, the NAACP will take only a little bit more time. We don't really have any awards over here in the black media, but if we did, the award for most outstanding sellouts would have to go to the NAACP. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our contributors. Peggy T., Quasi, Nelson, Joel Hunton, and Bert. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.